Hey, what's up, everybody? Long time no hear from. I apologize. Been busy with a bunch of things, but I don't know if you guys have listened or are aware, but we do have a podcast now called PDR Tool Time. And the last episode, which I'm about to upload, is about the top PDR screw-on tips. Now, I do have some co-hosts that we are on the show. Daniel Grom, Vince D'Alessandro, John Hiley, and you might know John Hiley, I think you do, from Dent Trainer, online PDR training. If you haven't gone to denttrainer.com, you are in for a treat. And if you like this tutorial, you can imagine what the other tutorials are. Now, this is basically a spin-off of the podcast we talk about. The great thing about the podcast is that we talk about PDR tools, a lot of them. And we have some interviews with PDR tool makers, the new up-and-coming guys, a lot of cool new interviews, and some good PDR tech tips. So things that you can learn some stuff off of. And even for you veteran techs, obviously the guys who are starting out. And we try to keep you guys as educated as possible in this realm. So check this out. Let's get started, and we are going to go right into this one, okay? Now, my tooltip rotation, what I call it, is that these are the certain tools that I use, these tips that I personally use when I start a bigger dent all the way down to finishing. Now, we'll get into the last two tips at the end. Those technically are not for really finishing a dent. They can start a dent, but I use them for some crowns, which we'll get into in a little bit. All right, so let's start with the first stage. The first stage would be some soft tips, okay? And the first soft tip you're going to see is the R4 Dentcraft tools, which you see the first two on the left. This one right here is a bare tip of the R4. On the just to the right of it, you're going to see an R4 with the cherry cap. Now, why is it that I use this? Well, for one thing, that cherry cap stays on from all angles pretty dang darn good. It snaps in there very, very tight, and I can start bigger dents with this. I can finish pretty well. It's a firm tip, and I can also tap down crowns with this. So these are screw-on tips that work really well for pushing and tapping. Now, I'm going to let you know that I really have a very in-depth tutorial about these tool tips with video that shows exactly what I'm doing with these tips. I highly recommend you go check it out. Denttrainer.com. Hundreds of videos. John Hiley and I are on there, and we just throw you lots and lots of tutorials, and you'll be on there for months getting acquainted with different techniques. So I'm going to move on. And next, I'm going to go to the Ultra Dent tools, which is the tip is A44 Ultra Dent tools. This one right here is a bare tip right here without the cap on it. So just give you an idea. Can you use these tool tips without any tape or without any protection? You sure can, but you better know what you're doing, because metal on metal can crack paint very, very quickly. So I recommend using the tips on the right. Now, again, these tips are great for starting like bigger dents or getting a lot of the meat out of your dent repair, okay, without causing pock marks or push marks. Well, you can still cause pock marks and push marks. It's just, it'll be less frequently, or well, I wouldn't say frequently. You're not going to be able to do it as you would for the sharper tool tips. Okay, got my tongue twisted on that. Now moving on again. Now was the first stage. Now this is the second stage, which the second stage isn't that much of a stage. Okay, I use technically one tip. I call this as the second stage. It's kind of a midpoint tip on the second stage. And that one is the A44 DM Ultra Dent tools as well. Now, Dentcraft has this tip as well. It's not the same model number, but look for the midpoints. Dentcraft has a lot of different tool tips as well. As we mentioned on the podcast, if you have not checked out the podcast, I encourage you to do so. PDRtooltime.com. Check that out, or go to iTunes, Stitcher. I think you guys will really, really like it. So this is the tip I'm actually talking about. I'm talking about with that one right there. Now, I highly recommend using some tape on this. Not just talking electrical tape or Gorilla tape. I personally like to use gaffer's tape. There's some other tape that we're talking about on PDR Tool Time. I forgot what it's called, but it's a Mercedes tape. It's really strong. It's like gaffers, and it's heat resistant. You're going to want to put tape on these tips when you're using plastic because it will slip. And if you slip, you're going to make what I call is a snail trail. I think a lot of other techs call it as well. It's an inverted crease, a high spot, and you do not want that. That tip right there is great for body lines. Pushing on nasty body lines without cracking paint, without making pock marks. You can still make high spots, but you're not going to crack paint. At least it gives you a chance to fix it before cracking paint first. Now, when I'm working smaller creases, really tight areas, sharper areas, I'm in the third stage, and I'm going to choose this kind of like, it looks like a dowel or a wooden tip. I forgot that we put it on PDR Tool Time too. We talk about it. I'm really bad right now, but I am just going with this, and I created this keynote presentation for you guys to kind of give you an idea of how good our tutorials are. Now, I'm telling you, I've got a better tutorial than this talking about it. It's visual. It's got videos on there. I go in detail about what I'm telling you right now. But anyways, going back on track, the wooden synthetic tip, it's from Ultra Dent Tools. It looks like wood, but I heard it's kind of a plastic with something else. It works really good for pushing. I don't recommend tapping it. We're using that for tapping because it kind of marks the paint a little bit. But some guys have success with it. Obviously, I forgot to tell you the tool tip in front of that to the left. I use that a lot for tapping down as well. So a lot of these tips you're seeing can be used for tapping down as well. There are some definitely you don't want to be tapping down with, which we'll get into. Okay. The next one is that was the one I was talking about, the wooden tip. Now the next one is the A44DS from Ultra Dent Tools. One of my favorite for just getting out the nitty gritty, and you don't have to worry about pocking up paint or making big mistakes, because this will allow you to fix it. It's very sharp. I use it for finishing creases. A lot of the time I do that. It's not so good on aluminum because aluminum needs a lot of push power, which we'll get into next. And the next one is, it's the root beer tip. It's the A44US from Ultra Dent Tools as well. This one right there. This is almost like the hardest plastic you could use. And it's between like a glass feel and just a very, very hard, sustainable plastic. It lasts a heck of a lot. A lot of the guys like to use these for tapping down. Again, it's not that it marks the paint. It actually leaves like little indentations in the clear coat sometimes. So be careful if you're going to use this tip to tap down. I prefer to use it for finishing on motorcycle tanks when I use it because the metal on the motorcycle tanks need a lot of push power. Aluminum or anything that's got a really deep pit in there, and I need exact pinpoint and a lot of strength in the tip without it mushrooming. The mushrooming means that it'll get soft. It'll eventually lose its shape. This holds its shape fairly well for a long time. Now I do take a file to it, and I will shape it every once in a while. And as you can see right here, it's not super sharp, but it's perfect how I want it. Okay. Now another tip, it's kind of, you can find it randomly places. It's a white Delrin, which is the same as the black tips that you're seeing here. But I don't know why, but the white seems like it lasts a little bit longer than the black. It's supposed to be made out of the same stuff, but Maybe there's a little bit of difference. I'm not a plastic tip expert. I just know what I like. And if you guys can find some of those, I would pick some up. They'd last quite a while. And that's that one right there. Now, the final and fourth stage that I like to use, and this is something you have to be very, very experienced on. You cannot be using a super sharp tip like you see here for just randomly going, oh, I'm going to use that to just push with. You're going to pock the paint and crack it really, really quick if you're not careful. Now, you can get these tips from Dent Craft, PDR Finesse, Ultra Dent Tools, and Dent Gear. And you probably can get it from A1, I believe, and some other places around as well. And that sucker is super, super sharp. Okay, I like to actually take a file to any of these and make them even more sharp, like you see here. Really, really deadly pointy. Actually, the more pointy and sharp it is, the better I like it, because I can see my tooltip super quick. Now, you have to position your light right and correctly, otherwise, again, you will create little acne, little pock marks everywhere, and you'll probably end up having to sand. Okay. Now, this one right here, completely underestimating. This I use for motorcycle tanks for pushing. Great tip to start big dents with. Really, really good. A lot of guys can get carried away and they'll push too much with those, and then they'll overstretch the metal. Be careful with these. They work fantastic if you know how to use them. Also, they work great for tapping down crowns. I actually put those on my blending hammer too as well. But if I have a real nasty crown, I'll use these rubber ball soft tips. And you can get those from Dent Gear. Dent Gear they make some really good stuff. Really good rubber balls. All kinds of new things. I think I talked to Sal not too long ago. He's got some new stuff coming out. Some really, really cool stuff. Also, this one right here. This is a tip that's the same thing. It's kind of like that synthetic wood. And that's from Ultra Dent Tools as well, the 844 PMP. And what I did, if you can't see right here, is I actually put a little round piece of leather on there. Now, this is fantastic for pushing dents and crowns down, basically. So I don't want to go too far into it. You guys should check it out. Visit us on pdrtooltime.com. Check out the podcast. You're going to love them a lot. I think you're really going to find them entertaining and very helpful with a lot of tool tips. If you like this one, this is just a brief little taste of what I talk about. And this isn't very super visual. The videos are. So I encourage you again to go to denttrainer.com and give us a shout out. Give some likes. Subscribe to PDR Tool Time and on iTunes and Stitcher or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. And subscribe. Let us know what you think. I'm Mike Toledo. Hey, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And subscribe to denttime.com if you can, if you like this video. Thank you.